Hello, it's me, Liz Yuille from Old Stables Crafts. Thank you for joining me today. Today is another Top Tip Tuesday, and this week I am looking at my all-time favourite adhesive, the multi-purpose liquid glue. It's gorgeous. This is sometimes known as green glue, although the glue isn't green. Anyway, let me flip the camera down and we can start taking a look at it. So I've done a little bit of prep because the one thing with liquid glue is that it needs to dry. So just a quick recap, we have looked at Seal and we've looked at Seal Plus. Seal is great for mats and layers, for card making, for putting paper onto boxes, those sorts of things. And then Seal Plus is a much stronger adhesive and is really good for actually putting the box together. So not just putting paper onto the box, but actually constructing the box itself. You do need to be slightly careful with Seal Plus because it is a very strong glue, and sometimes if you put it really near the edge of your card and then pull back, it can delaminate the card. So do just be careful of that. If you want a top money saving tip on how to save money on your Stampin' Seal Plus case, look at last week's Top Tip Tuesday on Seal Plus and you will find my top tip on saving money. So this week we're looking at multi-purpose liquid glue. This is, as are all of our adhesives, it's on page 127 of the new annual catalogue. If you don't have an annual catalogue and would like one, drop me, so hop over to the my website, there's a link for that below, and you'll find a catalogue page, and on that page there is a request form. Just fill that in, and if you're in the UK I can pop one in the post for you. If you've already shopped with me, you will get one anyway. I generally send all the catalogues that we get through the year. I generally send those to anyone who has shopped with me in the previous 12 months, so long as they spent £25-ish upwards, then you automatically get a free catalogue. So if you want a catalogue and you haven't got one, and you want the next catalogue, obviously buying from me will be a great help. Otherwise, just ask me and I can pop one in the post to you. So green glue, as I say we sometimes call it, is number 13. It's pictured up here. It is £4.50. It lasts forever because you don't need to use very much of it. I know I've seen a lot of people using far too much. Anyway, so let's see what it says. Crafters must have glue. Here. Securely adheres small embellishments. Includes narrow tip and broad tip, strong bond, dries clear, acid free, and you get 0.9 of an ounce or 27 millilitres. So whether that's 0.9 of a fluid ounce or 0.9 of an actual ounce, I don't know. So it has two ends. There's this broad tip end. I never use it, just saying. I think some of my fellow demonstrators may not even realise it's there because it just stays on. And then there's this is the main end that I would use, which is a very fine tip. Let's see if I can get that so you can see it. Now it does build up a little bit of an overflow every now and again, so I just peel that off and pop it in the bin. It does dry clear. It comes out white, so I normally just do a sort of scribble around the edge of my mat, and then I use that to pop it onto the layer below. And the joy with this is because it's wet, you have literal wiggle room, so if something's not straight you can straighten it out, but then once it's glued it is permanent. Hopefully I have left this one long enough that it's dry. Let's have a little look. Possibly. Let's play with that later on. So the other thing that you can use it for, and I've got all sorts of embellishments here that we can use that aren't already adhesive. Don't know which ones of these are actually current, but let's have a look at one of these flowers. Now you could use a mini glue dot, and we will be using mini glue dots later in the series, or you could use your liquid adhesive, and all you would do is pop a little dot. Don't need much. I've got this tiny little dot on my card, and then pick up your embellishment and pop it on the top, hold it in place, and when it's dry, I mean already it's sticking, but when it's dry that will hold it in place. Now, one thing I would say, it does dry clear, however it's also repositionable when it's dry, as in if you pop glue down onto your surface, and let's spread it reasonably thinly. If I want a repositionable glue, if I leave that to dry, it will never be totally tack free. It will dry tacky, so it becomes a bit like a post-it note, a sticky note. So it is slightly gluey, which is not necessarily ideal, so do be careful that you don't have it sticking out the side of your layer, because it will be tacky. So we've adhered an acrylic flower. Let's have a look at a sequin. Where's my take your pick? Let's pop the end on my take your pick. So let's grab one of these sequins with my take your pick, and oops, again I'm going to pop the tiniest little dot, and I'm putting very little pressure onto the edge of my glue pot. You need a little bit. Can you see how tiny weeny that dot is? And then just pop that on, and sometimes you do need to, if you've got a new bit of take your pick putty, you do sometimes need to just help it off, and then I tend to just use the other end of my take your pick to push it down so that it then sets where you want it. Now if we come back, let's pop the lid back on there. I just use these because they don't take up so much space on my craft desk, which space is always a minimum. It doesn't matter at a premium. It doesn't matter how big your space is, there's never enough. So you can see this is already going clear, but it is sticky. It has some more drying to do, but it's never going to be completely not sticky. But what it does mean is you can pop something in place temporarily and then peel it off again. So it's not quite set yet. Now this I glued 10 minutes ago. So let's have a look and see if we can undo it. I mean, it's ripping the paper, and I really had to put quite a lot of force onto getting it to come to pieces. Again, it probably needs more than 10-15 minutes to fully dry because it's between two surfaces, but it's eminently doable. The other thing that you can use your multi-purpose liquid glue for, and this can look a bit odd, but you know, hey. So let's run a bead of that along, and I'll use white because it's white. Actually, I won't use white because that's white. Let's use copper. So I've got some copper embossing powder, and if I get my spoon, I can add embossing powder to that. Oh, I've got a hair in there. That's not good. Let me just, while I've seen that hair, let's get it out. You really don't want hair in your embossing powder, or that. It's better. So let's add a little bit more. So I will leave that for a little bit before I then attack it in the nicest sense of that with a glue gun, a heat gun. But I'm also going to grab, should have got this out before obviously. So I've got in here a tiny little bit of the gold leaf. So I'm going to use it. Actually, I could use that, couldn't I, where I've scribbled it, because this is now tacky rather than wet. So if I take this and pop it in here, and then get one of my sponges and burnish it off. Now obviously this glue wasn't put there specifically for this, but it shows the point. You can use it for your gilding. If I put just a line, ideally straight, but you know, again, I can, now this is wet, so I need to be slightly careful not to smudge it too much, but I can pop that on, and again when it's dry I can burnish that off and it will leave a gold flake layer. So I'll pop that down there and hopefully that will dry while I am doing other bits. So really versatile adhesive. Let's just put all that back to where it came from, or not. Right, so let me grab my trusty cheese board and this. So this has got copper embossing powder here. Let me pop that out of harm's way. So if I heat my heat gun, now the glue is not fully dry, so it may bubble, but it will give you the idea. Yeah, it is bubbling, but it will give you the idea of what you can do with it. So I'm not only cooking the embossing powder, I'm cooking the glue as well, but you can get a nice line of glue. Obviously better when it's dried, so put the embossing powder on, let the whole thing dry and then heat it. It works really well. And again, once this is dry, you can burnish it off and it will look really good with your line. So again, these haven't had a huge length of time to dry, but you can hear, hopefully. Let me bring it up a bit. So going in underneath here, not coming off. If I do the same, this is still a bit wet. Doesn't surprise me, it is still a bit wet, but you get the idea that this nice and solid, not going anywhere. I wouldn't use it for ribbon. It's not recommended for ribbon, but I wouldn't use it for ribbon. But what it is good for is if you've got a fraying end of your ribbon, and I'm looking at my ribbons trying to find one that might be a good example. Oh, that would be good. So this is some of the new In Colour metallic, which is a very open weave. Now it can undo. However, if you get a little bit of glue coming out of your glue pot and just pop it along the edge there, it will stop it from fraying quite so badly. So just a tiny little spot, and that will stop it fraying, because otherwise you can end up with it looking like this. But by sealing those ends together, which is really what you're doing with this, you'll stop that from happening quite so readily. So that's another use for it. Obviously you don't want to stick it anywhere while it's still wet, because it will adhere. But yeah, so really great for mats and layers, box construction, adding embellishments, sealing the ends of ribbon. I mean, so many uses. But do just be aware that although it does dry clear, it will stay that slightly tacky, so you don't want it exposed and dry. Don't want it exposed and wet, but you definitely don't want it exposed and dry either. So there we go. I hope you found that helpful. If you did, a thumbs up is always appreciated. Next week I will be looking at what you can do with tear and tape. And again, lots of things you can do with tear and tape that you may not have thought of. So I will see you back here for that next Tuesday. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon. If you've got any questions or comments, do remember you can leave those below in the description bar. In fact, let me just bring my face up properly. So if you've got any questions or comments, below the description bar there's an area where you can leave comments, and I will get back to you. Sometimes it does take a little bit of time to get back, but by all means do leave a question there. If you could leave it so that it's obvious what the question is, and I mean that in the nicest way, a comment that says, "Sorry Liz, I don't know what you mean by that." I wouldn't know when on the, we're now at 15 minutes on this video, when, which that you're referring to. Whereas, Liz, I don't know what you mean by adding gilding flakes. That's a question that I know what you're asking. What do you mean by that? I don't know what you're asking. I hope that makes sense and isn't too patronising. Good grief. Anyway, I think I better stop. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye bye.